This is Aaron Perry with Tech 12. Today I'm going to show you guys how to do a little bit of wiring. We're just going to change out an amp. So first, because you have a live power wire coming through, you will always want to disconnect your battery, because disconnecting your battery will reset your computer, it will reset your engine light, whatever lights were on your dash, will take them off. So if you're going to disconnect your battery, if that matters to you, write down whatever was on there, because you won't get it back. So right here, just disconnect it. I already loosened it off. This one just has a wing nut, so you can easily disconnect it. We're doing an amp today. The problem with this amp is two of the channels are burnt out, which means half this. So this does left front, left rear, right front, right rear. So they just burn out over time. So we got a MTX audio that's like a competition style. So we're going from Kenwood to MTX. Pretty good upgrade. Right here, we're just taking some wires off. I'm going to show you how to heat shrink and crimp and stuff as well. Just going to simply pull the amp, pull the patch cords from the back. That's just right here. What your amp does is when you start your vehicle, there's a little blue wire right here. From factory, when you turn your key on, your stereo comes on. This blue wire goes to your stereo, which would turn your factory amp on, which I hooked all these speakers up to the amp. Lots of people leave them hooked up to the receiver itself. You get a little bit more clarity when you hook it to an amp. So when you start your engine, what happens with electrical is you turn your key on and it doesn't just start. It sends an electrical feed to your computer, which is a 5-volt reference. 5-volt reference runs from your computer to your starter. You can then start your engine. Your engine then tells your throttle body to give it fuel. Your throttle body will then read your O2 sensors from your computer, and it will tell it, okay, give it more fuel, more air, more fuel. Then from there, you're going to go to your alternator, which this has already gone through your distributor by now. That's telling which one when to fire. You got the computer's telling it that as well with the coil. The coil is just taking electricity and it's multiplying it by something like 20 times or whatever, coming out of that little tiny coil. So when you do shock yourself, you definitely know you shocked yourself. It's sometimes equivalent, depends if it's a hot rod, up to 220 volts, as if you shocked yourself from a dryer plug or a welder plug. On here, we disconnect the battery so we can have our positives out without arcing it onto our seats. So it goes from computer, does all that, makes the loop, goes down into the alternator. Your alternator is turning really, really fast. And inside there's just a little diode, and as it turns, it just creates a spark, which creates electricity. And as it's creating electricity, it just runs to your battery in a nice big lead, and it just runs to your battery, charges your battery. Your ground off your battery just runs to your frame. So you generally have two straight power wires, one to your alternator, a ground to your alternator. Some of them do have a power, so you run a power and a ground, depends on which way your setup is, more computerized stuff like that. Carburetor is just a one-wire alternator. You turn it on and it grounds itself, which does create electricity. By the time you got a positive current going, with negative current, you're creating electricity into your battery. This one, so you got a negative coming off, your positive is going to your starter, makes a loop, goes up through your alternator again, onto your battery. So it goes battery, starter, to your ignition. You turn your ignition on and it sends the reference, starts from your battery, then goes to your starter. As you crank it, it sends a spark to your crank sensor. Your crank sensor then sends the 5-volt reference to your computer, which then sends it to your distributor. Once your distributor's got that, as it's turning, it's making a revolution. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. As it makes its revolution around, it goes into the throttle body, which then, once it's gone through the computer, you're getting air and fuel all into one. Then your truck will let it start because you've got gas, you've got air, and you've got spark. That's what it takes to run, but it just makes it more complicated with a computer. It's nicer when you have a computer, because then when your check engine light goes on, you plug it in, you go, okay, well, it says my O2 sensor is bad. This gets its power. It's got a straight power wire to the amp, and you'd think, well, the amp should be on if it's got straight power to it all the time. But this right here is just your little blue wire. So that blue wire right here, if you were to send that to your battery, then your amp would be on all the time. But because it's not, it has to have the key on, your radio has to turn on before your amp can turn on now. This is your ground wire, straight battery. This was wired for 2 amps underneath this seat, but it did not fit the way it was wanted. So there is a power wire that's disconnected, but it's already ran underneath the carpet. So it's just a pain to take it out. Your ground goes straight to your seat post. So right here, you got a couple of 8mm bolts. I already loosened off prior to the video, so it makes it easier. So we're just gonna undo a couple of wires. The reason all these are to 1 on this one is because one channel was burnt out, so you're only actually getting one side volume, which is a hardcore pain. So if you just link them together until you have another amp, you just cannot adjust it from your stereo left to right then, because all you have is either left or right power. Here's just a couple of powers. Here's get ground there. And in the front, there's just a couple of patch cords you gotta get pulled. And then with a little bit of messing around, this slides out ever so nicely. This goes here. So right here, we got a couple speaker wires. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a piece of heat shrink that we already cut to make this video easier. I'm just gonna cut these right off. Slide some heat shrink over top. And we're gonna say right there is about good. And heat shrink, all it takes is either like a blow dryer, heat gun, or a lighter, or even a little wiring torch. But this is gonna do just fine. You can see as you're shrinking, or as you're putting heat to it, it actually shrinks to what you're doing. You just tighten it up a little bit with your fingers, as long as you're not scared to get burnt. Right there. Now right here, now I decided already by looking at it that silver was negative, red was positive, because red should always be your positive. Right there. So we're just going to take a little chunk of each, make a nice little cut. Nice little cut. Get another one of these. And on the red, we put our little bit of red heat shrink. Slide that on ever so nicely. Slide this on. We just put our wires right here. It says insul, non-insul. So that's the one we're going to use. It's just going to give us a nice crimp. Line that up. And give that a good crimp. Now that we got a good bite on it, we just pull the red nice and snug right up to there. So we always know that's our positive one. We can do the negative one before we heat shrink it, just so we're only using the lighter ones. Just pull that. So now we got them both red, black. We got them on the right sides. Just gonna heat them up ever so slightly without burning the wires underneath. When you first learn to do this, you will probably burn a few wires, but it's all good. Learning curves are the way to go. Can't learn if you don't do it. There's one. We're going to work on this one. So now that we have all of our wires that we're going to use heat shrinked, we got nice little ends on them. Black and red to show positive, negative, all the way along. That's all nicely heat shrunk. All done. Right here. Now we're going to slide this one in. Patch cords to the front, these to the back. Just going to slide it in like so. Right here now, we got our amp good and in place. Okay, so this is left front right here. This is left rear. Just gonna move these wires out of our way ever so slightly. So we just come here, right here. Left, right. Ooh. Left rear, sorry, not left, right. And so you can see that those don't slide in right away. That's just because we have to grab our Phillips screwdriver and do a couple of little screws. Lifts the platforms up just ever so slightly. Push those in. Ooh, look at that. Tighten those up good and straight. This one we decided was the front. Tighten that one up. Now, this one's the front, this one's the rear. So rear goes in first. And it's going to be negatives together. Just undo this. So right here, we're just going to, it's all nicely heat shrunk. Just going to grab this and split it somewhere in the middle, so it goes over where we need it to go over. Just put a little bit of a split into it. This right here is a power wire, which links to an amp, which is underneath the other rear seat. So this just kind of straightens out. This is our main from our battery. This is just a secondary amp that runs strictly the subwoofers, that's it. So they both push on. You tighten it up. Yeah, once it's good in there. Then, right here, this is your wire that we use to tell the radio to turn it on. Just give that a nice little push on. That's good and tight. And then we just have our ground, which is already split right there. So I did that. Straighten this out. Comes up and underneath the rest of them. And slides in ever so slight and nice right there. Then we go to the patch cord, which we're in the front, and we decided A was right, left was B. Just those two patch cords. That's all we need. Then we get to go hook up our battery. So now it's all in. We'll push these down once we know that it works. There's no point doing that if we have to pull it out again. So we'll turn the truck on. Oh, we got power. That's a good sign. Let this connect itself up.
No, honey, I'm good. I could have another, but I probably should not. I got somebody at home.
So now we just got it set up so it goes equal. And that's all we got to do. Just like that. There's a new amp in there. You learned about some wiring, learned how to crimp and heat shrink, and you even learned about some how your stuff went. This is the old amp right here. And that's the new MTX. Went from Kenwood 500 watt to a MTX 464 watt. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.